Hello friends, welcome back to my channel. So today we are doing my May books. Also, I just want to let you know that my cat is sleeping right beside my camera, so if you hear any snoring, it is her. Yes, my cat does snore. Okay, let's get into this. I have 3 books that we're gonna talk about today. Technically, I read 5 books in May, but I included 2 of those in my April books videos because I had already finished them. So if you want to check those out, go check out my April books video. I never know what side is on. So this side? This side? Go check it up. I'll link it up in the cards. So we only have 3 to talk of today. So the first book is The Wives. This is an adult psychological thriller, or just thriller. I don't know. It's an adult thriller, and this book was lent to me by my neighbor, and she will get it back as soon as I'm done this video. So this book is basically about this woman whose husband has 2 other wives, so a polygamous relationship. I didn't think it was polygamy based on the cover, but it is. The woman does know it's polygamy. I also just want to note that there's 2 different descriptions. So there's a description on the back of my book and the description on Goodreads. So in the back of my book, it doesn't say the main character's name, it just says you. Versus on Goodreads, it does say the character's name. The character's name is Thursday. And the reason why this is a little confusing is that because the Thursday and her husband call the other 2 wives by the days that he goes and spends time with them. So it's a little confusing because she's referred to as Thursday. There's one that's Monday and one that's Tuesday, I think. So it's like, I thought that her name was not Thursday, but it actually is her name. So yeah, just something I wanted to note, that because of the description and like the situation of the book, it took me about halfway through to realize her name was actually Thursday. But if you read the Goodreads description, it tells you, so it's like not a spoiler. That's what I'm telling you. Anyways, it just makes it easier for me to be able to refer to her as Thursday. So Thursday's husband has 2 other wives. This is not a problem until she decides that she wants to get to know the other 2 wives because they don't have any contact in between them, and then she befriends one of the wives, and it turns out that her husband is abusing the other wife, and you know, she becomes concerned, and it goes from there. So I read a couple of the Goodreads reviews, and a lot of them said that they liked the beginning of the book, and then halfway through it got really crazy. I didn't like the beginning of the book, and then halfway through it got crazy, and then I started to enjoy it more. I found the beginning to be very mundane. It's just kind of like her talking about her relationship with her husband and like her domestic woes and all this stuff, and I don't know, I just found the beginning to be boring. It wasn't until halfway through that things started to get interesting, and as it got interesting, it kind of like spiraled out of control. There's a lot of like plausible scenarios that happened. Like Thursday thinks different things happen. I don't know if that makes sense necessarily. I found one of the plausible scenarios to be more interesting than what actually happened in the end. So I mean, like, I liked where the plausible scenario was going, and then they like changed direction, and I was like, oh, okay. One of the things I didn't like about the book is that mental illness is a driver of the plot, which I'm not a big fan of. I don't think that using mental illness in thriller books is inherently bad. For example, The Woman in the Window. I read the book, and it recently became a Netflix movie, if you want to check out the movie. But in the book, the main character, she has like a lot of like mental health issues, but it is not the cause of what is going on in the book, but it makes her an unreliable narrator, and that's interesting. In this book, mental illness is what causes all of the issues, and therefore inherently gives it a bad name, right? Like, it's the classic scenario of like someone's like schizophrenic, and like it just kind of like muddles and makes it seem that like anyone with these types of mental illnesses are bad. Like, they're constantly calling the one person crazy, psycho, and it's just a very negative view of mental illness. So that's just kind of like my thoughts on that and in thrillers. So yeah, I didn't really like that part. I will say that overall the book is well written, that like it was I went through it really quickly. It's written so it's addictive. You want to know what's gonna happen. So I give them props. I give her props for that. It was an addictive read. And yeah, Definitely a thrilling book. Lots of terrible things happen, but it's not necessarily my favorite. I give it 3 out of 5 stars. If you're into thrillers, check it out. But if you only like to read like the best thrillers, this isn't the best thriller out there. And yeah, if you couldn't tell, my mom and my neighbor really like to read thrillers, so that's why I've been reading a lot of thrillers lately. I do enjoy them. I will have to say, if you're curious, my favorite thriller I think I've read was The Girl on the Train. That's kind of like my benchmark for a really good thriller, and I've yet to read anything close to that yet. Okay, up next we have The Crown of Gilded Bones, and yes, this is a very thick book. It took me 2 weeks to get through it, like I suspected. Yeah, if I hadn't read You at the beginning of the month so quickly, I definitely wouldn't have read 5 books. This one's a big one, and I read most of this over the long weekend. I was reading it in my long weekend vlog if you want to check that out. So this is the 3rd book in the Blood and Ash series. I won't say too much about the plot of this book as to not spoil the other books in the series, but it is a new adult fantasy series about this girl in this world, and there's like vampires and werewolves, but not your like traditional vampires and werewolves. So this book came out in April. So I've been out for like a month by the time I got around to it, and I had heard mixed reviews online. The mixed reviews being mainly that it wasn't as good as the other 2 books in the series. Also, I want to note too that I read the other 2 books in the series back in November, early December. So it's been a couple of months since I read them, and ever since university my memory has gone to shit and it's harder for me to remember things. So I get why there's mixed reviews, because there's a lot of info dumping at the beginning, and if you were like me and hadn't read the books in a while, it was very confusing. Like, it's hard when you're trying to remember who everyone is and how the world works, and then on top of that they're just adding all this new information to the world. So it was a lot. It took me about 200 pages to like really get into the book and settle into it. I lost my train of thought. Someone texted me. But yeah, once I got into it and like settled in and kind of remembered everything, I was good. If you're gonna read this book and haven't read the other books in a while, I recommend either like doing a reread or at least googling like a plot synopsis or a refresher, so that way you are not as confused as I am. And it's definitely something I'm gonna do for future books in the series, is read a refresher, because the way that JLA writes her books is that there's like no time that happens in between them. It's like kind of like the next day, and she basically just like continues going, not like normal books where they kind of have like a preamble or like a refresher, like, you know, like, no, there's none of that in this book. JLA is like known for like having like spicy books, and I will have to say that while there was some in this book, definitely not as memorable compared to the other 2 books. Like, there is like scenes from the other 2 books that like I still remember, like still like stuck out in my mind, and in this book there just wasn't as many. There was only one that like really sticks out to me. So, and also it takes at least 200 pages for there to be a spicy scene. So if you're like reading this book for the spice, it's not as good as the other ones. This book is way more about the characters and the plot. Like, lots and lots of twists and turns happen at the end of the book as well that completely change the whole entire like trajectory of the series. Some of the twists I saw coming, I was like, yeah, I knew that was gonna happen. Others I didn't see coming whatsoever. I was just like, whoa. So it was a nice mix between the 2. One thing I also want to note that I find really annoying about this series is that there's like Poppy and Hawk are like the 2 main characters, and then there's a couple like secondary characters, like Kieran being probably like the tertiary character, and those 3 are the most developed in the book. The rest are pretty underdeveloped. I really can't tell you, like, there's 3 of them, like Delano, Niall, and Emil. I couldn't tell you the difference in between any of them. They're just like underdeveloped so much that there's nothing special to them. There's nothing that makes me go, oh, I like this character. Like, it's just meh. Like, there's nothing wrong with having a large cast of characters. Like, I've read books like that are done well, but if you're gonna do that, I think you need to develop the characters more. So there's something I noticed because there's like a lot of characters introduced in this one. So I have to say, overall, this is not my favorite in the series. I give this 4 out of 5 stars because, and in reference, the other 2 books got 4.5 out of 5 stars. While it's not my favorite, I do see how this book is really important in the overarching story, though. So much stuff happens with the characters in the plot, so it's one of those books like when the series is done and when you look back at the series, you're like, okay, yeah, this book was very important. That's kind of the feelings that I'm getting from this book. So if you like the series, it's definitely worth reading it, but don't expect this to be like your favorite book in the series. And I would like the next one out immediately, please, and thank you. And then the final book that I read this month is Shine by Lauren Miracle. I should have googled this. It's Miracle or Miracle. Sorry, I didn't Google it, but anyways. She wrote the TTYL series. That one was like pretty popular when it first came out. This one won a bunch of awards but wasn't as popular. So anyways, this book follows Kat, who in her small town, one of her good friends, Patrick, is assaulted for being gay. There was a really heinous hate crime committed against him, and because of that he is in the hospital in a coma, and there's a chance that he might not survive. And Kat decides to take it upon herself to figure out who committed this crime, because the sheriffs in her town are just like not cutting it. They're not doing enough to do it. So yes, that is the premise of this book. This is a YA mystery, and the mystery in this book is the best part of this book. It took me a while to figure out who committed it, not as long as Kat, the main character, but like pretty long for being a YA book. I find that like that's the difference a lot of times between adult and YA ones. The YA ones are just so simple that I figure it out like right away, versus adult ones usually take me a little bit longer. So this one did take me a while to figure out who committed it, and I kept on like going back and forth. I'm like, is it this person? I'm like, no, I don't think so. Is it that person? No, I don't know, like this doesn't line up. So that was really good. Really enjoyed the mystery. It made me think, and I think that's the sign of a good mystery, when you find yourself thinking about who did it when you're not reading the book. The actual subject matter is pretty dark, to say the least. I mean, they list a couple of things on the back. They say poverty, clannishness, intolerance. There's way more than that. There's obviously there is assault and violence. There's a lot of drug use going on. Ew, bye. She's leaving, my cat. There's a lot of drug use going on. There's just like a lot of like really sad things that happen in this small town. Obviously, like I said, there was a hate crime committed against Patrick because he's gay, so there's a lot of homophobia in this book. So yes, it is not exactly a happy book that makes you go, oh, I love life. No, this is the type of book that makes you sit and reflect on your own privilege. That's definitely how I felt. So yeah, definitely check out trigger warnings for this book. Not exactly happy, but with that, I will say that I think the characters were really well written. They were very complex characters, that no one was good and no one was completely evil. There was sides, like there are people who do really awful things in this book, but they're not completely evil. Or there's people who like seem so good and Christian. There's a lot of like religiousness in this book too, just want to note that. There's people who seem good and Christian, but they do bad things. So I think that's a sign of like a really good book, that the characters are so complex and lifelike. Also, that kind of has like a little bit of like an episodic nature to the book, where Kat will like reflect on her past, things that happened in her past or with Patrick or just to herself, and then she goes and investigates and kind of like interrogates someone, and like things are learned, and then she like reflects again, and then she goes and interrogates. So it was kind of like nice, where it's like episodic in the middle. It was like easy to read and stuff. So yeah, it was a pretty good book. I give it 4 out of 5 stars. Not a happy book in any way, shape, or form. And there were also a couple of things that I didn't agree with, but I don't want to spoil the book, so I won't like say it. But yeah, I gave it 4 out of 5 stars. I recommend this to anyone who likes a good mystery or is interested in any of those subjects like the Deep South or reading a book with a hate crime, you know, if you're looking for something to study or something like this, I think this would be a really interesting book to study. So yes, that is this book. Okay, and then now for my TBR, as you can see, it was kind of peeking out in the back. So I got 4 books here, and I have like another series that I'll mention in a second. So yeah, let's get into it. My June TBR. So first up, we have The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue. I always mess up this name, okay? The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue. I just like try and say it all together. Anyways, I've already started this book. As you can see, I've been a little slow at reading it because I've been watching Ginny and Georgia. I cannot watch a TV show and read a book at the same time. So my TV show watching, I've been suffering lately because I've been, you know, trying to read books. But this time it was the opposite. I was watching a TV show and wasn't reading as much. But anyways, my friends gave this to me for my birthday. It was funny because this book was like all over TikTok. It was, I think it won like Goodreads, one of Goodreads like awards for the year. It was like very well received. It came out last year. And I made a video back when we were in lockdown. I was at Chapters. I was like, books I would buy at Chapters if I had the money, and this was one of them. So my friends got it for me, which was super nice. So like I said, this book, very popular. If you don't know what it's about, it is basically this woman, Addie, makes a deal with the devil that she will live forever, but no one remembers her. Like as soon as she walks away from someone, they instantly forget her. So it's a very interesting concept, and it's like a mix in between like a historical and like fantasy and modern day. So it's kind of like a little blend of a lot of different things that I like. And yeah, I heard that this book is pretty sad. It makes you kind of like reflect on a lot of things that's important in life and everything like that. Oh, and this is a adult book, by the way, or new adult. Addie's 23 in it. 80 pages in, as you can see, and so far I'm really liking it. It was one of those books where I was just like hooked right away. I was like, okay, this is interesting, let's go. The writing is very beautiful, but also not like overly intricate, and I'm really liking it so far. So excited to read this. Okay, and then after that, I've been lent another book by my neighbor. I try to wait not too long to read these books because they were lent to me, so that's why they kind of like sneak in a lot. So this is The Tattooist of Auschwitz. My neighbor lent this to us. My mom read it first. My mom's review was that she liked the relationship in here, and she thought that it was like a really good one, and she was like, you should read it because it's a good relationship. I know this book has been out for a while. Yeah, 2018, and it was like, it's been really like hyped up. Like I've seen a lot of people read the book and say really good things about this book. So it is about Lael. I'm not exactly sure if that's how you say it. Who's a Slovakian Jew who is forced to work as a tattooist at Auschwitz, and he then meets this woman, and after meeting her he decides that he's going to survive the camp and marry her. So, you know, historical romance, right up my alley. I know this is going to be a sad book. I have a feeling I'm going to cry. I feel it already, because you just know that with a World War II book, someone's gonna die and it's gonna be sad. I'm just saying it right now. So yeah, we'll see how I feel after this. I've got a lot of sad books, and that is why after that we're going to read something fun and lighthearted. I know like Shine was pretty sad. I know that people say that like Addie LaRue is pretty philosophical and sad, and then The Tattooist of Auschwitz, like 3 sad books. I need something fun. So Beauty Queens by Libby Bray. We're gonna go with Bray. I've read a couple other Bray books. So she has a historical fantasy series, Great and Terrible Beauty. I read that like a while ago when I was like 13 or something, and absolutely loved it. She had another book come out and I've read it, and I gave away the book. I wish I hadn't given it away because I kind of want to read all of her books is like what I'm feeling, because I know that she has a bunch of other books that have come out since. The other book that she read was a complete opposite. It was like an adventure quest, modern day, with like mystical sci-fi elements to it. Very interesting premise. And this one is a complete opposite. I really like how she kind of like bounces around different genres. So this book is basically a bunch of beauty contestants get stranded on a desert island. Yeah, that is the premise. And based on what I know of Libby and also some of the like reviews that I've seen, this is very camp and also satiric. So I'm very excited to read it. I think it'll be like perfect for after a lot of sad books to read something funny. I bought this book a while ago. I think like I was in middle school or something like that. Yeah, this book came out in 2011, so it is an old one, but I'm excited. Something fun and summery. And then after that, we are going to read The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo. I think that was already on my TBR ones. I didn't get around to it, but I really want to read it this month because it is Pride Month and I know that there's a sapphic relationship in this book, so I thought it was perfect. I would love to read more things for Pride Month, but I have so many books that I already own and I feel guilty about buying a bunch of other books, so I'm trying to read what I have. So this is what I have. Basically, this follows this reporter Monique who interviews Evelyn Hugo. She is a big Hollywood star and she through the 50s to 80s, and she has 7 husbands along the way, and Monique gets a chance to interview her and ask her about her life. And there's something that connects Monique and Evelyn together. And yeah, I've just heard many amazing things about this as well. I don't know when it came out, but it was really popular last year. It came out in 2017, and like ever since then it's been really popular. Taylor Jenkins Reid has written a couple of books that have been really popular. I think she just came out like 2 days ago, or like yesterday came out with a new book. So yeah, I'm excited to read it. I got this for Christmas and I haven't read it yet, and I'm trying to be better at reading the books that I buy like right away. It's not going the greatest, but yeah, that's this. And then the final book that I'm planning on reading, if I get around to it, because I have 4 books. No. Yeah, I have 4 books, so I probably would start a 5th one but not finish it. But it is A Court of Thorns and Roses. I ordered the whole entire series, so I guess this is a sneak peek into July, but as you can see, I have the last 3 books. The first 2 books I ordered, but they have not arrived yet. They shipped my order in 2 different ones. Court of Thorns and Roses, or the short form is like Akatar, that's what everyone calls it, online. It is one of the biggest series online. When I first started getting into like the book community on TikTok, that and Throne of Glass were the 2 biggest books, and I decided to read Throne of Glass first because it was a completed series and I prefer reading completed series. This is not completed yet. This book came out in February, so I wanted to read it then, and since making friends on Book Talk, so many of them have told me to read the series, and I've just not gotten to it yet because I wanted to read other things. And like I said, I'm trying to get through books on my bookshelf that I already own. I kind of read Throne of Glass, and then I read Blood and Ash. That was like the next one that I read. Then I read the whole entire Grishaverse, so this is kind of like my next new book series. For those of you who don't know the plot of the series, it's a loose retelling of Beauty and the Beast, but just like the first book, then it kind of goes its own way. The main character is Feyre. I think that's how you say her name, Feyre. She kills a wolf who turns out to be a fairy, or fae as they call it in the series, and because of that she's taken to the Fae lands and she must face her crimes. And as she's there, she falls in love, you know, kind of like Beauty and the Beast. Because I've been on Book Talk for so long, I kind of know the plot to most of the books. The last book that just came out, I avoided spoilers, and I found that people have been better at not spoiling that last one. But the earlier books, I know most of the plot spoilers to them. It'll be interesting because I know bits and pieces of what happens, but I don't like know what actually happens. So I'm excited to read it. Oh, and I didn't preface this, but this is a new adult fantasy series. They originally came out as YA, and then as the books progressed, they got a little bit more mature and spicy. A lot of people say that this series is more smut with plot than anything else. But yeah, I've just heard so many good things about it, so I'm excited to finally read it. That is my reading update. So that is it for this video, guys. As with all of my book videos, please let me know in the comments if you've read any of these books, what you thought about them. You know, I'd love to discuss. And if you have any book recommendations for me, I have a long TBR, but you know, if there's a book that you like, maybe I can bump it up. And if there is a book that you think I would really like, I will add it to my list. And please like this video if you like book content and want to see more on my channel. If you like book content, make sure you follow me on TikTok, because that is book content 24/7, 7 days a week. Wait. That's the same thing. Please subscribe to my channel so you don't miss out on any new videos. Okay, that is it. I will see you in another video super soon. Bye!